I've been meaning to do one of these for a while, and the straw that broke the camel's back recently was when someone in the elbow room on Second Life said that I should do a podcast. Now, I've never been overly enamoured with the idea of doing a podcast, and I thought that was very complex to set up, so I thought the best compromise was to do a video onto YouTube. And as I've got a lot of stories and anecdotes floating around my head at the moment, I thought I'd do it about my holiday in Liverpool. Now, you might be wondering, why the baseball cap? Very simple. At the moment I'm sporting hotel hair. So cool because for some reason they didn't put any shampoo in my room, despite being one of the poshest hotels in Liverpool, the Britannia Adelphi. Other than that, the room was very nice, apart from being extremely warm. So warm to the point that it could probably put you to sleep. Now, as reference material, I have my blog on MySpace, so I'm going to keep referring to that, so you'll just have to forgive me if I stop looking at the camera. Day one was a bit of an early start. I had to leave Cambridge at 7:30 in the morning. We stopped at a lot of places along the way to pick people up, but eventually we got to Thurrock Services, which is on the outskirts of London, but we didn't get there till about 10 in the morning, and they gave us a few minutes to have a comfort break, and then we swapped coaches, by which time we headed off to another service station, somewhere called South Mimms, where the driver had a break for half an hour. After South Mimms, we stopped at Norton Keynes. Norton Keynes is the most anonymous service station I have ever been to, ever, because it seemed scarily exactly the same as South Mimms. The building was the same, the shop was the same, the signs were the same, everything was the same. It was a clone. On the way to fill the time, I listened to a Doctor Who CD. This one, in fact, The Last Dodo, read ably by Freema Agyeman, which was an excellent listen, and I would recommend that to anyone. Also, I delved into the iPod and I watched a few video podcasts, some newly subscribed, the most entertaining of which I think was John Cleese, which was an extract from a public speech he gave in Australia, which was very funny, and he had a lot of comments to say about hotel rooms. I managed to take some pictures out of the coach room window as we entered Liverpool, and there, for example, is the Mersey funnel, the more interesting of the two cathedrals in Liverpool. So, day two. I can never sleep in hotel rooms, so I woke up ridiculously early at about 5:30 AM, but it did mean I had plenty of time to get ready. We left the hotel at about 9:30 in the morning, and we went on a coach around Liverpool and was shown the various places where the Beatles lived, most of which are very, if not all of which, are very humble dwellings. They're not big, exciting buildings. There, for example, is the house that Paul McCartney was built in, which, had it not been bought relatively recently by the National Trust for Preservation, you could walk straight past and not notice at all. But then all of this is quite comforting, because as much as people tell you the Beatles were fairly middle class, their houses belie this, and they're very small places indeed. So we went round Liverpool seeing all these various places. We stopped in Penny Lane, and we saw everywhere that is mentioned in the song Penny Lane. All these places still exist. The bank, the barber, they're all there. And then after that we went on to the Beatles story, which is an exhibition on the Albert Dock, and it consists of lots and lots of Beatles memorabilia. There's the original instruments that they played. There are also concert tickets, contracts, very rare photographs. It takes you through the whole story, recreating the record shop that Brian Epstein owned, and also they don't quite touch on the Apple store, but they do certainly touch on the post-Beatles era as well, and there are rooms dedicated to the solo careers of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And the John Lennon room was very minimal, very extremely minimal. Orange room, right in the middle of it, a centerpiece. John Lennon's glasses, which must be worth an enormous amount of money, but you could look at them through glass, and it was a privilege to be that close to something that had been on the great man himself, as it were. After the Beatles experience, I was going to head to the ferry on the Mersey, but it was heading towards lunchtime, so I asked in the shop of the Beatles experience, where I bought 5 t-shirts, a mug, and a very cheap sounding Beatles karaoke CD, but it will come in handy when I DJ in Second Life. I went around the Albert Dock where the Beatles experience was based, because I'd asked where could I buy a sandwich, and apparently you could get one on the Albert Dock. And so I got a sandwich. It was a toasted sandwich, and it was gorgeous, and I sat by the Albert Dock, and I was able to see various boats. And it was a day for boats, because it turns out there were powerboat races on the River Mersey that day. And there was a helicopter which swooped way down low to possibly only 50 feet above the Mersey, and was shooting coverage of it for a British channel called ITV4. And there was a PA and a lot of stuff going on, but not many powerboats, so I had a look round the exhibitions by the sponsor, which was Honda, so you could see your Honda motorbikes, your Honda lawnmowers, the Honda Formula 1 car with a very accurate simulation of driving Formula 1, which various people were taking part in. And so then I decided to try and find the ferry across the Mersey, which was a long walk. I had to head all the way along the dock area, and at this point it became even harder to find, because they are doing works on the dock area. They are putting over a mile worth of waterway in, so eventually you won't have to walk it at all. You'll be able to go up and down it on water. Anyway, I did find the ferry on the Mersey, and I found the guy on the gate, showed him the so-called ticket I'd been given by the coach company, and he directed me across the way. And he said, well, if you want to get on the ferry, you'll need to go in there and get a ticket. So I literally ran, because I'd looked at my watch, and I had about 5 minutes to get on the 3 o'clock ferry. And so I went in there and I got the ticket, and I ran, and I did indeed get on the ferry. Word of warning, if you're going to get on the ferry at this time of year, have a jumper with you. I did. I needed it. It was freezing cold. But we went all round the Mersey, and we saw the other side, and then we came back, and By this time I decided that I definitely wanted to see the Cavern Club, because it was the only bit of Liverpool I hadn't yet seen that was Beatles related. And so I asked someone who'd been on the ferry. I said, "Do you know where the Cavern Club is?" And they said, "Well, what you need is Lord Street." So I got my map out and I looked for Lord Street, and off I went. And I headed off and I looked for Lord Street. And I did indeed find roughly the right area, but I then got totally lost again. So I was going to go up to a policeman, but the policemen were mounted and seemed rather busy with paperwork. So I turned to the nearest person and I said, "Where is the Cavern Club? And I'm sure I've gone past it." And they said, "Well, if you go there, past that building and through there." And I have to say